And then I'd email back and I'd go, look, you saw me. So either you just thought, let's see that girl off the telly, and it was just vanity matrix, which, wow, thank you. Or you did have money there, but there's a reason you don't want to tell me, so please tell me. And some of them did.
We've touched on fundraising a little bit. I know that it's a very hot topic for female founders especially. I have found that it's a hard conversation to have because no one really cares until they go through it and experience it, and it's a little bit of a losing conversation, but it's so broken. Women receive less than 2% of venture funding. I'd love to hear about your experience, any advice you want to offer, but I think like for me, I'm very excited to know your numbers and watch your success and how much you've been able to accomplish with arguably not a lot of funding, I would say, for what you've been able to post. But it's just such a broken system.
I think there's two different aspects to this. One is we need more women in the VC world. 70% of women are on VC committees to do funding. So that needs to get up. So how do more women get into the VC market, and how do we get more LLPs that are full of women? So that's definitely one aspect of it. But I think also one thing I learned in recovery and going to rehab is sometimes you have to look at yourself as much as looking at what's around you. So sometimes I'd leave a meeting thinking those fuckers just didn't get what I was about. And other times I would leave and then I'd get the letter of rejection. And I would then email saying, could you just tell me why you didn't invest? And they might go back saying, well, the fund was out of, thing. And I was saying, and then I'd email back and I'd go, look, you saw me. So either you just thought, let's see that girl off the telly, and it was just vanity matrix, which, wow, thank you. Or you did have money there, but there's a reason you don't want to tell me, so please tell me. And some of them did. And some of the things were, I couldn't follow your story, or the figures were too low, or whatever it might be. This was a time of Casper mattress. It was a time of scaling. It was a time at the beginning of Glossier. So it was a time of don't give a shit about retention. It's all about new customer acquisition. It was about, on your numbers, you're saying 60% retention or 70% retention. I think I started with 70% retention, 30% acquisition. The market was saying 70% acquisition, 30% retention. I was saying, you can't build a business on that. It's crazy. But I wasn't, so certain things were, I was not talking how the market was talking. And all they were wanting to do is tick some boxes. So could I have talked more about what they did want to hear, that maybe I just didn't bring up? So being equipped to understand where is that venture investment market at the moment? What are the things they're talking about? They're all talking to each other. What are their concerns? What are their worries? What are their excitements? And just be aware of them. It doesn't mean you dovetail your bloody business into that, because that's crazy. But it means that you remember those points to bring out in a meeting more than the points you think they need to hear. Because I think as a woman, I want to go into a meeting and bring them into the world of Trinny London. I want them to just feel that vision. Now, if there aren't enough women in the room, men need to be taken through things methodically, generally. I'm sorry if there's men listening, but there is a fundamental reason there was a book written called Women Are from Venus and Men Are from Mars. And that's that element of how can I then go into the next meeting and say, first of all, we're going to do this. And when we've done this, we're going to go slightly to the right and do this. And then I could see, just their computation is different. We are multi-absorbers of information. And I think men generally like the methodicalness of this. And now I've fully comprehended that, and I'll go on to the next thing. So I had to learn to tell my story differently and not run in there so that it was overwhelming. Because we can be overwhelming. We have to forget how we can come across when we might be quivering with fear of will I get an investment is something that can be unnerving to somebody who's actually sitting there and doesn't quite know how to deal with it, or says, let me call in my secretary and see if she'd use your product,
Yeah. Okay. So this is such a beautiful answer. I think that every audience is looking for something different, and catering your message accordingly is like the takeaway I hope people have, because that is necessary in fundraising.
Yeah.
The other is it's important that we all get funded and get the money and figure out how to make that happen to change the numbers.
Yeah. But I would say there's an interesting thing about there is another stat we don't talk about a lot of how much more women give away on the cap table at the beginning than men. All right.
So much more.
So there is an element here about if you cannot at some stage get investment, what can you sell? Are you prepared to mortgage your house? What are you prepared to give up for the gain? Because whilst you make those incredibly tough decisions, you have more opportunity to hold on to that controlling interest you need in your business, or majority shareholding you need in your business, or leading investor, leading on the cap table. Even if it's a 40%, you're leading on the cap table to give you that sense that what you want to execute on, you will have the ability to execute on. And it's not for everyone. It might be that you just need to raise at whatever the market value is in order to raise, especially if you've been going a bit. But if you are at the early stage, I remember listening to Gary Vaynerchuk. Now, Gary Vaynerchuk is a Marmite, you'd call it in England. Some people love him, some people don't. He mainly talks to sweaty young boys of 15 in a room. But there's things he says that really resonate. And I remember sitting in my entitled house in Notting Hill with this huge goddamn mortgage. And he said, what can you sell? What can you sell? Look around, what can you sell? And I thought, I can sell my clothes. I'll just sell my clothes. And just, there's things we think we can do, and then we can do more. And it's what's that little bit more that you're not thinking about yet? What are you prepared to put on the line that you haven't thought about putting on the line yet?